We are we're middle of page Chesam and base. Amr of Levi, about 18 lines up, a third of the way up from the bottom. Amr of Levi. Kasha Einshin shall midas Yosem and Einshin shall arise. The punishment for cheating someone with weights and measures is greater than that of arayis. Shezen amar bahen el, v'zen amar bahen ela. That means in the pasuk of arayis it says, "Kes kol ha'ta'eva sa'el asu anshe haaretz." Has like a shortened version of the word ela. It's used the words el. And by weights and measures, the pasuk says, "Kisei vas Hashem elekecha kol oiseh ela." It says the full lashon. So from the fact that he uses a full lashon by deceptive measures as opposed to by arayis, you see that measures being deceptive and measures is worse than arayis. Like the more my mashma, listen, every upstanding balabas always says this. Like, why are we so focused? Why are people always so focused on arayis and sneas? We should focus more on being upstanding in business. So the Gemara says the same thing. Umay mashma the high ale kashahu. How do we know that we're saying that the ale and ela is a lashon of relative strength? Where do you see that how strong the word ale is, whether you use the full lashon or not? How do you know it means how important something is? That's what the Gemara said. Because we see in a different context, we used ele haaretz means the powerful people in the land. So you see, el means power. In fact, the Gemara by Gaberais Nami Ksiv Ela. There's a pasuk by Arais that also says Ki kol asher yasa mi kol ha'te'evas ha'ela. So why are you saying that it has a shortened version by Arais, but it also has the long version? So the Gemara hu lemute midas mikaris. That's coming to tell you that although we have it says Ela and Ela, it's almost like a Gzeir Shava. It's coming to tell you that Karas is only for Arayas. There's no Karas, Ela. It says Ela in these things. So it's only in Arayas that you have a din Karas and not in Midas. So if you're saying that the pasuk is coming to tell you that there's only Karas by Arayas and not by Midas, how could we learn from El and Ela that Arayas is not as bad as Midas? If Midas doesn't have the same einish, it doesn't share the einish of karas, that seems to indicate that it's not as strong. So tomorrow, the hasam efshir b'shuva v'hachalei efshir b'shuva. In the end, when someone cheats a bunch of customers in a store by having a false measure, there's no way to undo what he's done. He can't go and find the people who he stole from. But in Arayas, if someone's over in Arayas, it's been adam l'makom. So when Yom Kippur comes, if he does real tshuva, he can get a kapara on it.
Listen, but it's not always been out of the malko. I mean, if there's children mamzerim, they're damaged to.
Let's say, so you're saying a person who has mamzerim should have to ask the children that he made mamzerim for mechila. There's no mechila to be had. I mean, there's no need for mechila. You're saying that it makes it permanent. It can't be undone.
Right.
The mamzerim can't be undone, but it's not that he still gets a einish for the fact that they are mamzerim. That means when someone steals from someone else, you have to ask him for forgiveness, and if you don't do that, you cannot get a full tshuva.
Taisus brings it up. By the way, he says v'dafka b'aray she'en behem mamzeres.
Yeah, very interesting. Let me see. Let's see the Taisus. Hasam efshir shuva v'dafka b'aray she'en behem mamzeres. Ababal eishes ish. Other men have been a shara rice, yesh behen mamzeres. Zel ma'uvas lo yuchel l'sakin k'da amar yes. B'efshir b'tshuva. Rav Chaim oimer avagav shu ma'uvas lo yuchel l'sakin v'kom efshir b'tshuva. So tziva Kadosh Baruch Hu lo tziva el lasis l'tshuva. Ava gazlan tshuva so hu sheyachzer exela k'dil s'exela v'hecha de gazlan l'rabim and idel mi yeshiv. Avagav l'mini yasab hen tzarchi rab mikom hakom lav tshuva mal yisi. So the Rav Chaim says, like I said, the Taisus himself says, Taisus first says it's only like Lizzie was saying, only a rice that doesn't produce a child. But Rav Chaim says, Rabbeinu Chaim, Rav Chaim says that no, it doesn't make a difference. Even though he can't be misakin it, being misakin it is not a precondition. It's not a prerequisite for getting for doing tshuva and getting a kapara. So it's true that he can't fix it, but even though he can't fix it, that's not a necessity for tshuva. Masha Enkein, when someone steals from someone else, in order to do tshuva, you must ask the person you stole from. You have to return what you did and get his mechila. V'amar of Levi, kasha gazel hedjit yoisem gezel gavai. We're on Peches Amid Beis, about 10 lines from the bottom. V'amar of Levi, kasha gezel hedjit yoisem gezel gavai. Theft of a person is worse than stealing from Hegdish. Shezeh higdim chet l'meila. By someone who steals from a person, the Torah first says once you steal, you're over on a chet. Even before you are mile, the Torah says a lashon. Rashi brings the Rashbam brings the lashon. There's the Rashi's. Shaloi, where is it? No middle. Gezel hadit hiktim lechet l'meil l'chsev nefesh kisechta u'mal amal. So it says the person when he steals, he's already over on chet, and then he's mal amal, which we know meila is when you nena. So later, the way the Rashbam explains that he's going to be nena later, but he was already did the chet right away. V'zeh the meila lechet. But when you steal from Hegdish, you first have to be nena before the Torah says there's a chet of meila, or what I'm saying, meila in the pasuk is used to refer to being nena. So you have to first be nena, and then afterwards you'll be over on the chet. V'amar Rav Levi, bo re'ei shaloikim midas gvarchu midas basa v'dam. The Baruch Shalom is not like a basa v'dam. Hakadosh Baruch Hu berach Yisrael be'eser mushtayim. The Baruch Shalom benched the Yidden with 22, but killed them b'shmayna. And he gave them a klala with 8. Now the Gemara is going to explain what's the 22 and what's the 8. Baruch be'eser v'shtayim me'im b'chu koisai ad kaimemias. The first is that the Torah says, and we give all the brachas. So im b'chu koisai starts with the letter aleph, and the end of that bracha is kaimemias. So it ends with a saf. So with all 22 letters of the aleph base, since the parsha starts with the aleph and ends with the saf, that's mashma that all 22 letters of the aleph base are used for the brachas. The kilim b'shmeina min b'choikais v'im b'chukoisai timas. So it's from the aleph ad v'eschukoisai ga'ala nafsham. So it ends with a mem. So I'm sorry, v'es. It starts from vav and it ends with mem. So from vav to mem is 8 letters. So there's only 8 letters used in the klal. By Moshe Rabbeinu, it's the other way around. Tishma. So it starts with vav. Ba'ad la'avdim, which is mem. So again, it goes from vav to mem, which is only 8. So it goes from vav to hey. It goes through the whole aleph base. So his klala was with 22. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he gave his own brach, which we just read yesterday, when the Bakara read it quickly and low. So the first letter was vav, v'hayim shemaya, and the last letter was hey. So it's with 22 for the klala. So you see, Rebbeinu Shalom is more generous with his bracha and more stinting with the klala. And Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was really saying over the Rebbeinu Shalom, when he said it over in his own name, he did it the other way around. We have a siman. There's a list of disparate brises that all tell you different halachas about midas. So we give simanim for all of them. We brought in the Mishnah that there are places where the minig is to, when you give a measure, you heap it up as high as you can. If you buy not a pound, not a weight, but a volume, you say I'm buying a I don't know what would be a volume, a quart of wheat. So some places they take a quart container and they heap it up as high as it can. In some places they take a level and they level it evenly. So the Brisa says you can't switch. If you're in a place where the minig is to do it evenly, you can't heap it, or vice versa. So where do you know that? Tamaloima efa shlema. You have to do a full a shalim. A efa is a measurement of dry goods. So it says shlema. So shlema tells you it has to be the proper amount, whatever it is. It has to be that's not going to cause people to lose out. As Rashbam says, Efa shlema v'tzedek mashma v'tzedek elam mishlema nachman shetzarch sheyeha efa shlema shliyav l'dei ramois. It won't cause someone to cheat. The oisen came shemayiru oisen acherim v'yoyim kacha minig. The problem is if you switch it around. I mean, you could just say in basic terms. If it's always switching around, it will give a sharp operator an opportunity to take advantage. People will see the prices. It's $10 for a quart of wheat, and he doesn't realize that in this place that $10 means heaping. And this guy will say, "Oh no, $10 gets you a flat thing," because he'll say, "Oh look, that guy down there. Well, he bought a flat thing of quartz, but he doesn't realize that they switched on that particular transaction." What happens if someone says, "Listen, I'm willing to change it, and you'll pay me a little less. Instead of heaping, I'll do a flat, and you'll pay me less. I'll pay more in order to be guidish, to heap it up." That we don't listen. Like we said, if you're going to allow people to do this, even if this particular transaction will work out okay, it will provide an opportunity for others to be misled. We had this Gemara earlier that when you weigh on a scale, there are two ways. Every seller always has to add on a little bit in order to make sure that he's giving the full amount. So there are two ways to accomplish that. One is you can just add on. You can make sure that the two sides of the scale, the customer's side goes a little bit further down. And the other way is you can make the scale balance and then take a little bit off the price or add on a little more after the scale is done. Because the Torah says, Evan Shlema, you have to use a shalim, meaning that not something that could be misleading. How do we know that they can't come to an agreement to in this particular case, one sale will make up for the difference, even though we're not doing it in the typical way for that place. Change Shaimalei. The same thing like we said, Lagabi a volume, we say as far as how to measure weights on a scale. Amar Yehuda Misura. The Torah says, you shouldn't have in your house a measure. An ephah is a measure of size. The Torah says, you won't have the veisecha in your house. It's when we're dashing it to say you not just that you shouldn't have, but also that you won't have. You're not going to have produce. Matam. Why is it that you don't have? Mishum ephah ve'ephah. If you have a large and a small measuring cup, those are used for deceiving people. So if you have such a thing, it will be the Einish will be lo yecha. We darshan it to mean that lo yelecha you're going to end up not having. Lo yeh bekischa, you won't have lo yelecha bekischa in your pocket, in your wallet. Matam, why is it that your pocket's going to be empty? Mishum Evan ve'Evan. Again, there's a second pasuk that says, La yelecha bekischa Evan ve'Evan gedolah ktana. You shouldn't have one small and one large Evan to mislead people when you weigh their things. So, and if you don't do that, La yelecha bekisecha, you won't have in your pocket, you're going to have empty pockets. Aval ema v'shledet yelecha. Aval Evan shleima v'tzed yelecha, Eva shleima v'tzed yelecha. You should have both of these things. You should have only accurate measuring cups and only accurate weights. Tanaraban, Yelecha, you should have, the Torah says in the Lashon of Yelecha, Malamid Shemamidin Agordamin Lemidas. Ve'em Amidin Agordamin L'shar. It's coming to tell you, I wish my friend Rabbi Kerzner from the Chaim Berlin Alumni Minyan on Avenue L, his father was often discussed as a Nobel candidate for economics. And when I read this Gemara, I wanted to present it to him and say he's a very conservative. He's a big believer in free markets and entrepreneurship. I think this Gemara is an expression of the Gemara's capitalist approach or free market approach. So the pasuk, the Brisa says, we're maimed argument lamidus. We make a officials. We make let's say like the CFTC. We have different regulatory bodies that will be in charge of making sure that people have the proper measures. But we don't provide for prices. We don't do price controls. We don't say that you can't charge this price or that price. Let's see the Rashbam on this. That you shouldn't sell things for more than they're worth. Svarhu, it's not needed. If someone wants to buy something for more, someone else who needs money, who has the same thing, will sell it cheaper. If someone's charging more, he's going to lose his business. And then this guy, the market is going to force him to sell it cheaper. I mean, it's a perfect expression of Adam Smith's supply and demand. The Bein Nesiya, Okma Argument, Bein Lamidus, Bein Lashar. But of course, the government, they wanted to appeal to the masses, so they made price controls. They appointed people to be both in charge of making sure that people don't cheat, and also for prices. Amalei Shmuel Karna. Shmuel told his Talmud Karna, he said, go tell them that we don't, that's not the halacha. We don't appoint people to be in charge of sha'arim, of the prices. Nafik Darshlahu, Karna went out, in the end, he found the Bein Nesiya, I guess, got to him, and he told him, and he said, not like Shmuel instructed him, but he said there is a halachic basis to provide rules for the prices. Amalei mashmecha. So Shmuel heard about it. He said, "What's your name?" Karna. Tepele karna be'ena. A horn should grow out of your eye. Nafik karna be'ena, and that's what happened. You come on, Savar. How could Karna have such a thing? Where did he get such a thing? Savaki haidam Rami Barchama Amar Yitzchak Mamidin Argudamin Bein Lamidis Bein Lashar. There is a Rami Barchama Taka Paskin like this. Mipnei Haramoyim. It is allowed because of Haramoyim. So the Rashbam explains what the Ramayim is in two ways, which again very much accords with what I understand to be the theory behind supply and demand. A guy waits until he has a monopoly, until everyone has already sold everything, then he's the last one left, so he sells it for higher. So once monopolies is a problem in free markets. You can't allow someone to use his monopoly to squeeze people. Well, the other pshat is that the Ramayim The reason why you have to look at the prices is because it's really an outgrowth of people. It's another way of saying that people will cheat on the prices. They'll say they're making the same price as everyone else. They're saying I'm charging the same $10 for everyone else, but they don't mention the fact that the other person are doing £9 and he's doing £10, or vice versa. And I got particular pleasure out of this Gemara. Tana Rabban, Hayemavakish Imenu Litra, Shaikaloi Litra, Chatzi Litra, Shaikaloi Litra. Someone asks for a litra, you measure out a litra, Chatzi Litra, Shaikaloi Chatzi Litra, Revia Litra, Shaikaloi Revia Litra. You have to measure out in all these different measurements. My Kamash, what is it telling you? How else are you supposed to do it? The Maskaninan Metikli Adhachi. That the measurements only go down to a quarter of a litra, but less than that, one is not supposed to measure because since it's such a small amount, it's hard to get it right, and it's likely to cause the fraud. Someone asks for 3/4 of a litra. Don't sell him 1/4 liters 3 times. Because like we said in the earlier Gemara, the more times you measure, each time the seller has to add on a little bit, the buyer is going to benefit by doing this. Ella, sheikel litra, maniach rivia litra im habasar. You take a 1 litra weight and you put the basar on together with a 1/4 litra weight together with the basar. And that way, that's how you measure out 3/4. Tanraban, hayimavakish menu eser litrin. If he asks for 10 litrin, don't tell it, you shouldn't say, give me 1 at a time. He has to weigh all of them at the same time so that he doesn't have to, again, add on each time a little bit extra. The nefesh of the maznayim is the joint in the middle. A maznayim is a scale. So a scale is either hanging on a post that's on the floor, or else hanging from the ceiling on a stick that goes from the ceiling. And then underneath or on top of that stick that you're putting the scale on, you have a wheel that can tilt to either side. So that's called the nefesh. So it has to be 3 tvachim from the ceiling. It has to be 3 tvachim off the ground, because we don't want that. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the customer, the one side will go up. You'll put the weight on one side, and then the thing will go up and it will hit the ceiling, and you won't realize that it's not going up because it's too close to the ceiling. So you have to have enough room for the scale to operate. So you have to leave 3 tvachim between where the scale is and the ceiling or the floor. The Gemara later is going to say what case are we talking about? What is being weighed? Because as we're going to see, it depends on what kind of merchandise is involved and how much weight, how much room there you need. And the middle wheel, like we said, you put the different sides of the scale attached to it that they balance on. Those have to add up to 12, the sticks coming out of the sides of that wheel, and the strings that you attach the actual thing, the kli that's holding the weight and the merchandise, that has to stretch out to 12 tvachim. Because, as you know, there's a concept of leverage. The further things are, the more sensitive it is. So saying we're talking over here something that's very heavy. So in order for it to be perceptible that there's a difference, you need enough leverage that you can see the difference between them. So it has to be 12 tvachim in width, essentially, for the entire scale. If it's a person who sells wool or he sells glass vessels, it has to be, these are lighter than the original thing that the Mishnah is talking about, like we're going to see later on, that the first thing in the Mishnah is talking about metal, but this is talking about something that's lighter, so it only needs 2 tvachim. You don't need it, it's not going to go up and down as much because it's not as heavy. It just has to be test tvachim. Since it's not as heavy, it's more perceptible. You don't need as much leverage in order to move it. V'shel chemini v'shel balabayis, chemini and a balabayis, tluyu avir tefach uvoyim in haaretz tefach. They only need one tefach. The Rashbam explains because, like we said before, a chemini and a balabayis have to add one tefach. They have to allow it to be one tefach below the actual measurement. So since I guess they sell a variety of things, it's not heavy at all. So you don't need any extra space, but you do need that one tefach to be able, in those places where you always add on, the seller adds on one tefach, you need to have one tefach. That needs to be 6 tefach. V'shel turtani, someone who sells jewels, tluya ba'avir shloisha etzbois, v'gavayim and aretz shloisha etzbois, only has to be 3 etzbois. There's very little room that it moves because it's very fine weights. The kanu masla any idea? I don't know. There's no limit of how short the kanu masna has to be, since it's such small amounts. You just have to look at it. It doesn't make a difference how wide apart it is.
So the initial 3 tvachim, that was for whom?
We didn't say what it's for. So that's the Gemara. The Gemara is going to say now. As the Gemara currently asks. The first one, we didn't say who it's for. Who is it talking about? Amar Papa, the Grumi. He says it's talking about people who are who make metal. They melt metal. They run a forge, a blacksmith. So use huge chunks of metal. So they need the most space for their scales. Amr of Mani Bar Patish. Kederach she'amr le'inyan yisurin kach amr le'inyan tumasa. Just like we're saying, Ligabi, what the din is of what size and what the dimensions of a scale, so we're going to say that's also going to be determined whether the scale is a valid scale that's a kli and therefore is makabel tuma. My kamashwan, what do you have to tell me this? Tnina, chutmos naim shel chemini v'shel balabatim tefach. It says that the chutmos naim of a chemini and balabatim has to be a tefach in order for it to be makabel tuma. That was talking about Lagabi Kibble Tuma. So we see that, and that was the shear that we said also. We said that the rope that holds it from the ceiling, you need 1 tefach, like we said, because that's how much a Chamini or Balabais has to add on. He has to add on a tefach for the seller's part. So you see already that's what makes it tummy. So it didn't say the part about the rest of the parts of the scale that they have to be that shape. I might think that if they could be kalim on their own, maybe it's only the rope that's the handle. But these other things, maybe they are not. Let's say the other things could become tummy on their own. Mashmalan, that there has to be, the whole thing has to follow the shiurim in order for it to be a kli. Tanarabban, ain't oisim mishkoilus. Loy shel bots, not out of tin, but loy shel aver, not out of lead, loy shel gistroin, and not out of a mixture of different metals, loy shel shamin matchas, not of any metal, because metal can corrode and the weight can change. Aval oisu shel tsunma v'shel skuchas. He can make it out of rock or out of glass. These are things that don't corrode. Tanarabban, ain't oisin. We said before that some places the minig is that they level off the measures of a volume measurement instead of heaping it high. So in order to level it, you have to have something to wipe off the top, what's sticking off on top. So he's saying you can't make it out of a gourd, because it's light and it's not going to get everything when you push it through the pile. And out of metal, because it's very strong and it's going to take away even from what's inside the kli. You make it out of olive wood, or shel eggers, or walnut wood, or shel shikma, or sycamore, shel ashperua, or a different type of wood. You shouldn't make one part thick and one part thin, because then it will wipe away from the top unevenly. You shouldn't make one swipe over it, because that will leave over some. It's going to hurt the meicher because he's not going to get it fully level. It's going to leave over. And he shouldn't do a little bit at a time. Because that's bad for leikeach, but it's going to take away even from what's inside the kli. Elakulan, so elamai, you should do it something in between. You should do it not in one sweep, but do it steadily and not do it like a little bit at a time. Al kulan amar Rabbi Yechon Zakai, oili im amar, oili im loy amar. Yechon Zakai said all these halachas about how to do, how to measure and how to, let's say, sweep. He said, I'm in a quandary. If I say these halachas, then the people who are thieves will say, oh, so that's the way. If I'm selling and I want to make sure to get a good deal, I'll use a metal sweep to level, and then I'll end up a benefit. But if I don't say, Rabbi Yechon said, if I don't say it, people won't know the halacha. If I say it, then the thieves will hear, and that will teach them how to steal. If I don't say it, he's saying it's not that they won't know the halacha. He's saying the Ramayim will still. They'll say, "Oh, we can get away with it because nobody knows what the tricks are." So what did he talk to do? He did teach the halachas. He said it because of this pasuk. The ways of Hashem are straight, and that's the way that Hadikim go. And the Paishim, they're going to make it their business to stumble in it. So that's their business. They're going to, I'm not going to hide the Darchei Hashem from them because they're going to be nichshel in it. Person shouldn't be deceptive, do fraud. Bein b'mida, with when we're measuring linear lengths, b'mishkol and weights, b'mishura, and in liquid measures. B'mida zu medidas karka. That's talking about measuring the size of karka. If you're dividing up the property by Yerusha, so you have to measure the size of each plot. We had this a couple of weeks ago, that if a person measures during the Yemaisak Shamim, they used to use a string to measure. The string, the Yemaisak Shamim, would get wet, and that would cause it to expand. And the Yemaisak Chama would dry, and the string would contract. So you measure one person, one brother, during the rainy season, he's going to get a bigger plot than the person who got measured during the summer. The mishkal, and as far as weight, person shouldn't put his weights that he uses to balance his scales in salt, because that makes them heavier. I guess it was talking, we used stone or glass. I guess putting those things in salt makes them heavier. B'mishura shliyatiach, a mishura, a liquid measure, you shouldn't let it foam up. You know, if you buy a beer, you don't expect to get half beer and half foam. The kal v'chayim, the Gemara says you make a kal v'chayim. Ma mishura she echad v'shloishim v'shisha b'lug. Mishura is a very, very small measurement. It's only a 36th of a lug. I think, so it's a revius halug is what we make kiddush on. So this is a fourth of 36 is 9. So we're saying 1/9 of a revius. So even on that, you have to be careful not to add any foam, to count any foam in it. Hikbidel of Torah used the lashon of meshura, which is a very small measure. Really, we add in the Bach adds in tumen v'chatzi toimen. The toimen is the eighth, chatzi toimen is half an eighth. V'uchla, and I think a uchla we're going to see later on in the next amud is a fifth of a lug. Amar b'Yehuda Marav. Also, Adam sheyishem mida chasera or yisera b'teich beisim. Person is not allowed to even keep a false measure in his hand, in his house. Even if it's used as a urinal, so there's a very small chance that he's going to convert it later to use to measure things. But even so, Torah says you shouldn't have it. You shouldn't take the chance. Papa says this prohibition against keeping false weights and false measures in your house is only a place where they don't go and stamp the true measures. They have a regulatory body that comes and gives a stamp. So it's not a problem to keep something that's wrong in your house. You can use it for whatever you want it for, but no one will ever use it to buy things because they'll see it's missing the stamp. No one's going to buy without seeing the stamp. And even in a place where they don't have stamps, there's no isser to hold false measures in your house. If they don't have inspectors that come around, less lamba. If there are people who check, the person's going to be too scared that he's going to get caught. The Gemara says it, but it's not the case. Sometimes it'll be right before Shabbos, and he wants to do the deal, and the seller is not going to be worried that the inspectors are going to come around at that time. Okay, we're going to stop over here because now we're going to start with a whole new issue. Okay.
Thank you. 6:30 tomorrow?